Kursk was one of the most powerful submarines of its time, a symbol of the strength and grandeur of the Russian Navy. It set out for yet another exercise that was supposed to become routine, but instead, it went down in history as a tragic disaster. What happened on board the Kursk? The mystery of its demise still stirs the minds of experts and ordinary people alike. In this video, we will attempt to lift the veil and investigate the events of that fateful day. You will be presented with both the official version and a version that is generally not discussed, but it is the latter that answers all the questions that remain unanswered regarding the mysterious death of the unique submarine Kursk. So, make yourself some tea, sit down comfortably, and we will begin. This is the 90s of the last century. The great power of the Soviet Union is not judicially disbanded. The Russian state was being reborn, beginning its journey amidst chaos characterized by delays in salary payments, empty store shelves, rising unemployment, and the emergence of numerous criminal groups. During this time, the once mighty army, a source of pride for the Soviet Union, including the Navy, was gradually falling apart. Many warships were left standing at the shores, slowly rusting under the relentless passage of time, their fate sealed in being cut up for scrap metal sold for a pittance. The naval servicemen, loyal to their duty, were forced to endure humiliatingly low salaries, often receiving only scraps for their dedication and service. And so, in this challenging and difficult period, the nuclear submarine Kursk emerged on the scene, a symbol of hope, power, and former glory. This giant of the underwater world was not just a ship. It embodied the dreams and ambitions of the nation, preserving the symbols of a protector and strength that were so needed in the face of chaos. The submarine Kursk K-141 surpassed its predecessors with larger dimensions, more powerful armament, an improved torpedo system, and greater autonomy thanks to its nuclear power plant. Additionally, it featured a reduced noise level, making it harder to detect, and a higher underwater speed that provided better maneuverability and tactical advantages, as well as enhanced protection for the crew. Kursk K-141 was launched on May 16, 1994, and commissioned into the Northern Fleet of Russia in 1995. The development of this unique submarine began in the 1970s. This development belonged to the Ante class and was designed to counter aircraft carrier groups. According to NATO classification, this type of submarine belonged to the Oscar II class, representing the pinnacle of submarine technology at that time. At the time of its commissioning, submarines of this class were among the most powerful and largest nuclear submarines in the world. Oscar II-class submarines were distinguished by their unique capability to carry heavy weaponry and operate over significant distances, making them a serious tool against enemy aircraft carrier strike groups. At that time, Western fleets had no complete analogs to these giant submarines with such combat power and range. Although the U.S. had powerful nuclear submarines like the Los Angeles and Seawolf classes, they were smaller in size and primarily designed for hunting other submarines and conducting covert operations, rather than striking large surface targets. With a length of 154 meters and a width of 18.2 meters, the Kursk significantly surpassed Western submarines in size. For comparison, the American Los Angeles class is approximately 110 meters long, while the newer Virginia class is about 114 meters long. In other words, the Kursk was like a 6-story building stretching the length of 1.5 football fields. The power plant of the Kursk included 2 OK-650B nuclear reactors, each with a capacity of 190 megawatts, equating to 100,000 horsepower and providing nearly unlimited range. In contrast, many Western countries were still using diesel-electric submarines with limited range, such as the German Type 212A. The armament of the submarine was among the most impressive in the world. It carried 24 P-700 Granite cruise missiles, classified by NATO as SSN-19 Shipwreck, designed to destroy large ships and aircraft carriers. In comparison, American submarines of the Virginia and Los Angeles classes carry up to 12 Tomahawk cruise missiles, making the Kursk significantly more formidable in terms of firepower. Additionally, the submarine was equipped with 8 torpedo tubes of 533 mm and 650 mm calibers, allowing for precise attacks on both underwater and surface targets. The crew consisted of 107 individuals, officers, warrant officers, and sailors, divided into functional zones across 9 compartments. While Western submarines, such as the Los Angeles class, had crews of about 140, the Kursk relied on a smaller but highly skilled team. Thus, at the time of its commissioning, the Kursk was one of the most powerful and advanced submarines in the world, with no analogs among Western submarines in terms of size, combat capabilities, and strategic objectives. Due to extremely limited funding for the naval fleet, the submarine Kursk went to sea for about 2 weeks a year. This continued until the NATO bombings in Yugoslavia during Operation Allied Force in 1999. At that time, the Kursk was dispatched to monitor a potential adversary, specifically to track the movements of the United States and NATO naval forces in the Mediterranean. According to military reports, the crew of the Kursk successfully completed their combat mission. Upon returning home, the submarine was recognized as the best vessel in the Northern Fleet, and the crew was nominated for awards. The main takeaway from this mission was that Russia demonstrated it had not lost its military might, was capable of defending its borders, and could confront any adversary. In July 2000, a naval parade in honor of the Russian Navy took place, featuring the submarine Kursk, unbeknownst to anyone about the tragic fate that awaited it. On August 12, 2000, large-scale exercises of the Northern Fleet of Russia were held in the Barents Sea, involving combat ships and submarines. The Kursk was tasked with the practical launch of a Granite missile and the attack of a hypothetical enemy with 2 training torpedoes. The submarine was fully armed with a complete set of combat weapons on board. At least, that is what the official version states. During the military exercise, the Kursk successfully fired the Granite missile. However, when it came time to use the training torpedoes, something went wrong. At 11:25, Norwegian seismologists recorded an explosion measuring 1.5 on the Richter scale in the area of the Russian fleet's exercises. At 11:28, a second explosion, more powerful than the first, was recorded at 4.2 on the Richter scale, comparable to the force of an atomic bomb. By that time, contact with the Kursk had been completely lost. The second signal, resembling an explosion, was several times more powerful than the first. During this second explosion, the military cruiser Pyotr Veliki shook as if from an earthquake. For some reason, the commander of the Northern Fleet was informed that such a jolt occurred due to the activation of a radar antenna. As the exercise time elapsed, the Kursk still had not carried out the training torpedo launch, had not established communication, and had not surfaced. According to internal instructions, regardless of the exercises, the submarine Kursk was supposed to report back by 1440, but the Kursk did not respond. In such cases, military alert is declared and searches are organized, but for inexplicable reasons, this was not done, as no one entertained the thought that the mighty Kursk had suffered a disaster. For some time, attempts were made to contact the submarine Kursk. Radio signals were sent to all submarines to surface, and aircraft were conducting surveillance from the air. All efforts were in vain. Only 12 hours after losing contact with the Kursk was the alert mode declared. A deep-sea vehicle found the Kursk lying on the bottom of the Barents Sea 36 hours after the catastrophe, and 48 hours later, it was reported on television that the submarine Kursk had encountered technical malfunctions, had sunk, and that repair work was underway to address the issues. Initially, the fleet command reported that contact had been established with the crew, but later it was stated that communication was being conducted through P-Reastock, indicating a difficult and interrupted receipt of information, with varying sources regarding how the information was transmitted. Experienced submariners know well that any submarine does not simply rest on the seabed. Therefore, offers of multifaceted assistance for the rescue of the sunken crew came from neighboring states to Russia. However, the Russian government initially refused, citing the presence of its own forces. This refusal of timely assistance played a cruel and fateful joke, after which the whole world learned of the ineffectiveness and poor state of the Russian Navy. The submarine Kursk lay at a depth of 108 meters. The Russian Northern Fleet did not have deep-sea divers, nor did it have a specially equipped vessel to support underwater rescue operations. They only had 3 old Soviet deep-sea vehicles. For an entire week, the deep-sea vehicle AS-34 attempted to dock with the hatch of the 9th compartment. However, because this vehicle was quite outdated and had not been properly maintained, the batteries used in it were worn out, providing just over 2 hours of operational time before requiring at least a day to recharge. A catastrophic situation, to say the least. The main problem was that the deep-sea vehicle could not securely dock with the hatch of the 9th compartment and dry the transition chamber. One explanation for this was that the surface of the exit hatch on the Kursk, due to some undefined mechanical impact, had deformed and sunk into the main body of the submarine. There is also a version that the rubber sealing gasket in the docking area of the deep-sea vehicle had worn out due to age, failing to ensure adequate airtightness. As a result, the rescue mission of the Russian team ended in disgrace. After some time, under pressure from the media and the families of the submariners, the Russian government agreed to accept Western assistance. By that point, a week had passed, and on the 8th day following the tragedy, Norwegian rescuers began their recovery operations. The next day, the hatch of the ninth compartment was opened. However, all 118 crew members were already dead by that time. Poor organization, sluggishness, silence, and concealment of real events, along with illogical actions, caused public discontent. On the 10th day, then President Putin met with the families of the sailors. In the conversation, he acknowledged the terrible state of the armed forces, promised to raise the submarine to investigate the causes of its sinking, and to compensate the families of the deceased sailors. This was the official version of the events related to the submarine's demise. But now I will tell you the version about which no media officially spoke, and this version maximally answers all the remaining numerous questions. In early May 2000, Vladimir Putin became the president of Russia, a young and ambitious leader who had already established himself as an experienced statesman. At the age of 47, he combined decisiveness and pragmatism, which was especially evident in his approach to complex issues of domestic and foreign policy. Putin had a deep practical life experience gained from working in various fields, including service in the KGB and leadership positions in the administration of St. Petersburg. His experience allowed him to make confident decisions in conditions of instability and uncertainty, capturing public attention and hope for the country's revival. It is quite strange that the newly elected president was unaware of the ongoing naval exercises.
Я даже не знал, что там учения какие-то проводятся серьезные.
After all, it is the president who approves plans, schedules, and everything that is connected at the highest level with the Russian army because he is the only commander-in-chief. Let me remind you that this type of submarine was the best of its kind in the world at that time. Its presence in open waters would cause concern among even the most powerful global powers. This was due to the terrifying weapons on board, including the capability to launch nuclear missiles, making such a submarine capable of determining the fate of an entire fleet of an adversary in a matter of seconds. Naturally, this submarine could not escape the close attention of the naval forces of other countries. In most cases, there was a very low probability that someone would deliberately wish to destroy this submarine in open territorial waters. The reason lies in the fact that even if one were to successfully destroy this type of submarine first, it could result in an ecological disaster in the area where it occurred, because she has 2 nuclear reactors on board, and they equal a small Chernobyl, known to many for its catastrophe. The terrible tragedy with the submarine Kursk occurred just at the time when Russia in 1999 and in 2000 was overwhelmed by a wave of mysterious terrorist attacks in many of its regions. As strange as it may sound, it looks very much like they are links in the same chain. In other words, there was a behind-the-scenes war for power. One of the key figures and contenders for power was Boris Abramovich Berezovsky. At that time, Boris Berezovsky played a significant role in promoting Vladimir Putin to power. In the late 1990s, Berezovsky, being an influential oligarch and close to Boris Yeltsin's administration, actively participated in political processes. He was one of those who supported, both in money and in the news media, Putin's candidacy for prime minister in 1999 and later contributed to his election as Yeltsin's successor. Berezovsky was confident that Putin would continue to protect the interests of the business elite, including his own. However, shortly after Putin came to power, their relationship sharply deteriorated, forcing Berezovsky to leave Russia and become a somewhat distant political opponent of Putin. Boris Berezovsky is a mysterious figure to the public. In the tough 90s, he somehow managed to amass a vast financial fortune and secure a significant place in the inner circle of President Boris Yeltsin. However, since Berezovsky did not want to lose his influential economic and political positions after Yeltsin's departure, he began to search for a reliable and compliant successor who would help strengthen his influence. Ultimately, the choice fell on the relatively young Vladimir Putin, whom Berezovsky viewed as a promising candidate for the presidency of Russia. Berezovsky believed that if he personally participated in the establishment of Russian power, the authority would automatically transfer to him, even while remaining in the shadows of politics. Upon coming to power, Vladimir Putin refused to acknowledge the significance of Boris Berezovsky.
И второе. Как вы оцениваете усилия Бориса Березовского по созданию оппозиции вам и его прогнозы о том, что вас в вашем кресле скоро не будет? Спасибо.
Борис Березовский — это кто?
What led to such a radical change in status is something we will probably never know. Berezovsky was a well-educated individual in the field of business, as evidenced by his significant standing among oligarchs and in Russia's political circles at that time. On one hand, he managed to earn enormous money through his knowledge, but for some reason, he failed to gain substantial power after Putin's rise. This factor likely became a fatal mistake, both in his personal life and in the fate of the submarine Kursk. When Putin became president of Russia in 2000, Berezovsky suddenly began to accuse Putin of all terrorist acts, that Putin was not an honest man, that Putin was not the right man to lead Russia, and many other things that displeased Putin. And then you ask, what is common between Berezovsky, presidential elections, and the Kursk submarine? A little patience, friends, and everything will become clear to you. In the Kursk submarine's tragic story, there are some strange moments. For example, the first strange moment. On the tragic day, the very day when the naval exercises of the Northern Fleet were taking place, the submarine Kursk unexpectedly disappeared from the radar and did not send any signals for almost a day before it was discovered. At that time, the Russian Naval Command conducting the exercises claimed that 2 foreign submarines of the Los Angeles class were nearby. This is indicated by this document provided on the website of the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States. How is this possible? Foreign submarines were detected, yet our own submarine, potentially armed with nuclear weapons, seemingly vanished. Sounds absurd, doesn't it? The second strange moment is that in the official version of events, viewers are led to believe that the cause of the disaster was an explosion of munitions inside the submarine, allegedly caused by a collision, either with the seabed or another submarine. But how is that possible? A submarine designed to withstand a direct hit from a torpedo at the bow, capable of breaking through several meters of ice with its powerful hull, and effortlessly navigating rocky crevices, suddenly suffers a catastrophe due to some accidental impact. Agree, this sounds, at the very least, strange. For some reason, viewers are not informed of an important detail. The Granite missile cannot just explode on its own. It is equipped with multiple levels of protection, including safety switches and mechanisms that prevent accidental detonation. To activate the missile, these safety systems must be disengaged, and it must be prepared for launch through special procedures. Without this, it remains safe, as the main part of its explosive material cannot simply detonate from an ordinary impact or damage. It is essentially an inert object until activation. The third mysterious moment. According to the official conclusion, there was a fire in the main control compartment of the submarine. There, imagine, the temperature reached 2,000 degrees. However, this detail was not discussed by any officials and was simply overlooked, hoping that no one would pay attention to it. The fourth strange moment. At some point in time on the day of the tragic loss of the Kursk submarine, President Bill Clinton of the United States makes an unofficial phone call to Putin. The very next day, without any formal invitation, a messenger from Clinton unexpectedly arrived at the Kremlin. This raises the question, what was so urgent and mysterious that the United States representative needed to discuss in person that could not be solved by a simple telephone conversation? The fifth strange moment. Parallel to these events, a Los Angeles-type submarine of the United States was detected in the Norwegian port from satellite images, which became in the dock for repairs and stayed there for some time. Now, summarizing what has been previously stated, we add the following. After the tragic events with the submarine Kursk in 2001, criminal proceedings were initiated against Boris Berezovsky for preparing a violent seizure of power in Russia. However, an interesting question arises. How exactly did he plan to carry out this seizure? Putin has a security detail with a high level of professionalism capable of handling any threats from anyone. This suggests that Russian authorities might have been aware of some more complex and intricate scheme for seizing power. It's important to remember that Berezovsky was not just an oligarch. He possessed a remarkable intellect, incredible strategic intuition, and significant financial capital, which allowed him to act cleverly and unpredictably, always staying one step ahead. The question is, what game was he really playing, and what hidden objectives lay behind his actions? On the day of the tragic event, the FSB received a phone call. Colleagues from the United States inquired whether Russian intelligence agencies were aware that the submarine Kursk had been captured by terrorists. If this situation was not under control, it could lead to very dire consequences for the global community, considering the submarine was carrying a full arsenal, including potential nuclear warheads.
Личное оружие моряков хранилось во втором отсеке, в командном отсеке, в сейфе. Вот в ходе осмотра мы находили это личное оружие, которое находилось, еще раз говорю, в сейфе, в закрытом виде, во втором отсеке. Мы находили в четвертом отсеке. Причем вне сейфа отдельно лежащие пистолеты, автоматы.
The two previously mentioned American submarines were observing the actions of the submarine Kursk during the Russian fleet's exercises. At some point, American military personnel heard Morse code signals, which contained the following message.
Need help? Vintik has been captured by a group of terrorists. Some crew members have been shot. We have taken shelter and barricaded ourselves in the 9th compartment. Captain Kolesnikov.
This message was transmitted repeatedly for a considerable time. After a while, this message was promptly relayed to President Vladimir Putin. At some point, Putin received another message, more precisely, an ultimatum.
You must appear before the people of Russia and officially declare that you are handing over the presidency to me.
Now you can surely guess who stood on the opposite side of Putin. It was a man who had lost much, including influential positions in Russia. This organized event was a desperate action in the hope of changing something and attempting to regain control. In the message to the president, it was also stated that if the specified actions are not carried out, the nuclear cruiser Peter the Great will be destroyed first, after which we will strike at the United States fleet, and all of this will be on your conscience. We expect a positive response via radio from the cruiser Peter the Great within 2 hours. The newly minted president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, was well aware of who was behind this ultimatum. At such a moment, his every decision required deliberation and deep insight, for a careless step could lead to unpredictable consequences. One wrong move, and the world around him could instantly turn into chaos and disaster. The question was not just about preserving power, but about whether he could maintain control over the unraveling tension that could tear apart not only his country, but the entire international order. We already know very well that such actions are always permeated by complex political games, and history has repeatedly shown that many monarchs have achieved power by sacrificing both their own lives and those of their enemies. Such maneuvers are not random and require cool-headedness and calculation, where the price of mistakes can be too high. It was in this context that the decision was made to destroy the submarine Kursk. The strikes were to be so swift and precise that Kursk would have no opportunity for a counterstrike. Imagine, even if the submarine had ended up on the seabed but retained control over its missiles, it would have had a chance to retaliate from below. No one could predict what target might become the first victim of such a missile. Therefore, the shot was aimed directly at the control compartment of the submarine Kursk, the place where the full power and strength of the underwater vessel were concentrated. There are many versions regarding the number of shots fired, but one thing remains unchanged. It was the first and precise shot that sealed the fate of the Kursk, changing the course of events forever. Here, the only possible scenario for a precise strike on the Kursk could have involved the presence of a sort of sniper on the underwater stage, hidden among the depths of the sea. This shooter, armed with blueprints and technical data of the Kursk, receives the command to engage the target. From a short distance, he fires a torpedo, precisely aimed at the side of the control compartment. The charge, like a searing arrow, pierces the armored hull of the submarine and instantly creates a temperature exceeding 2,000 degrees inside the compartment. Within seconds, everything inside turns into hell. The crew dies in horrific conditions, leaving no time for reaction or rescue. This type of attack emphasizes the hole in the right side of the submarine Kursk. For mysterious reasons, this hole was not officially mentioned, and you won't find good photographs showing it in close-up. All that remains as evidence of the torpedo's impact is a frame from a low-resolution video clip of archival footage. Everything else is still classified as secret. But even this frame allows us to understand and connect the chain of logical reasoning. I also want to note that, informally, several high-ranking officers are aware that the Kursk was attacked by a torpedo fired from another country's submarine. The submarine Kursk, like a wounded beast, begins to slowly turn toward the attacker out of inertia. Its turn becomes a silent warning for the shooter, and the commander of the submarine that fired the first torpedo, realizing this, decides to strike again. However, this time he uses a different torpedo, knowing that the bow section of the Kursk was heavily reinforced. And so the second shot is fired. Perhaps this was the moment that later necessitated cutting off the bow of the submarine and hiding the evidence of this attack. The severed bow section of the submarine was later taken away as a secret that no one was meant to see. This is the same explosion that seismologists second recorded at 4 Hole and 2/10 was on the Richter scale. From such a near head-on explosive impact, both submarines were blown apart in different directions. The Kursk, already partially filled with water and heavier as a dead weight, sank to the bottom of the Barents Sea. The so-called sniper shooter also suffered external damage as a result of these events and the insufficient depth. Despite everything, the commander of the firing submarine gave the order to surface. Otherwise, that submarine could face the same fate as the crew of the Kursk. The damaged submarine, specifically an American Los Angeles-class submarine, slowly made its way to the nearest dock in Norway for repairs after carrying out the order to destroy the Kursk, which had been captured by terrorists. This event provides a realistic explanation for why 2 American Los Angeles-class submarines were located near the Kursk. Those who captured the Kursk likely didn't pay much attention to such a presence. However, the organizers and hijackers may not have considered that, at that time, neither Russia nor the United States wanted a military conflict. There is also a significant possibility that the Russian Navy might have refused an order to fire on their own submarine. Explaining that the Kursk was captured by terrorists may have been impossible due to time constraints, meaning decisions had to be made without delay. The President of the United States called the President of Russia, informing him that the task of eliminating the terrorists had been completed. But since the world community may not understand why America got involved, we will need written assurances from you that the initiative to torpedo the Kursk submarine was not on the part of the United States, but was initiated by you yourself. It is for this reason that, the day after the tragedy, a confidant of the President of the United States arrives in the Kremlin. It also sheds light on why Putin did not immediately make an official statement, taking a few days to assess and analyze public opinion in the country. This was indeed a wise move, as this pause allowed him to prepare a carefully crafted speech, the most appropriate for the moment. The struggle for power made ordinary people hostage to those terrible events, living practically in poverty, not receiving proper salaries, but day after day they performed their service believing that they had some kind of duty to their ambiguous homeland. Somehow, they continued to believe even when a power struggle was taking place before their eyes. Even Captain Kolesnikov, hammering out a Morse message from Bay 9, quite possibly realized that he was calling the fire on himself. Need help. Vintik has been captured by a group of terrorists. Part of the crew was shot. We took cover and locked ourselves in the 9th compartment. Captain Kolesnikov. Another interesting fact from this event, which is from a number of paranormal, is that some mothers of the dead sailors, a few days before the sinking of the submarine Kursk, had dreams that foreshadowed the death of their sons. This is a documented fact in various video interviews with the mothers. Why did not begin to rescue from the 9th compartment surviving 23 crew members of the submarine Kursk, including Captain Kolesnikov? Guess for yourself.